In Life's Story, we took a journey to discover the story of life itself. We investigated the claim that chemicals could produce all living organisms and explored the possibility of all life on Earth evolving by chance natural processes. By studying the variety, adaptations, relationships, and even the very movement of the creatures themselves, our journey compared the evidence for chemical evolution or intelligent design. Now, join us again in a wildlife extravaganza that will help reveal something of the plan and purpose of our own existence. Not just a journey to discover the origin of life, but the reason for the journey. This is the Sinai Peninsula, a harsh, barren landscape stretching across Egypt from the shores of the Red Sea. For 430 years, this ancient land of the pharaohs was a place of bondage for the Israelite nation. It is a natural gulf, which together with its sun-drenched climate produces a perfect environment for coral reefs and their inhabitants. And just look at the wonderful diversity of marine life. The clear, warm waters produce colorful coral growths like flowering gardens, whose pulsating polyps filter their food from the water. Stony corals provide a safe haven for armies of small fish. Where there is an abundance of light, there is a great variety of life. This is especially true of coral reefs. And abundance applies to the fish world in general. Fish make up the largest group of vertebrate animals with over 28,000 species. More than all other vertebrates, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals combined. Although we humans are still undoubtedly the most intelligent of all the creatures that inhabit this world, there are lessons we can learn from our animal neighbors. By studying their behavior, we can understand more clearly the purpose for our lives. For thousands of years, many people believed that a divine creator, unlimited in power, created all life on Earth. And indeed, all that we can see throughout the universe today. In the last 150 years, an ancient but minority belief has now become dominant. The theory that all life originated from a simple, single-celled organism. And if such an organism existed, could it eventually evolve into over 28,000 species of fish, 1 million species of insects, plus all birds, and over 16,000 species of mammals, reptiles, and amphibians? A divine creator, or a cell with unlimited godlike flexibility? Are they both tales too fantastic to believe? Was all life intelligently designed, or is it just the result of a continuing series of accidental modifications? Fish are cold-blooded animals that live in water, breathe through gills, and swim with fins and a tail. Most have a bony skeleton and are covered with scales. Sharks and rays, though, are not scaly fish and have an unusual skin texture. Shark skin is as coarse as sandpaper if rubbed the wrong way. Similarly, rays, like this blue-spotted stingray, are smooth on their undersides and rough on the top. The smooth belly of this stingray helps him to hover along the seabed whilst looking for food, and also helps him to cut through the water when swimming. This white-tipped reef shark is also a member of the fish family, but he has skin and cartilage instead of scales and bones. Life, it seems, has been made to tackle the same challenges to survive, but in a variety of ways. Most fish, of course, use gills to breathe instead of lungs. Fish gills are made from thin layers of plate-like tissue called lamellae, over which the water flows. As the water flows through these very thin coverings, the oxygen from the water is absorbed into the bloodstream, from where it is then carried to the rest of the body. If the fish starts to sink, it can absorb some of this gas from the bloodstream into its swim bladder to maintain neutral buoyancy. For the fish to ascend, the process is reversed. Most fish control their buoyancy with a swim bladder. Regardless of the size and weight of a fish, the swim bladder effectively makes them weightless in the water. Additional underwater control is supplied by two kinds of fins: paired fins, usually along the sides of the body, like the pectoral fins, and unpaired fins, like dorsal or anal fins on their back, tops, bellies, and undersides. The pectoral fins on their sides help the fish to turn sideways, slow down, or even swim backwards. Obviously, any fish without properly designed fins, or the muscles and bones that support them, would be unable to maneuver properly in order to find food or escape predators, so would be dead in the water. The dorsal and anal fins help the fish swim straight or lean to one side, while the tail provides the main thrust for swimming. And it doesn't matter whether the fish is long and thin, large and bulky, or round and stiff. The same basic design of fins and a tail works just fine, in all shapes and sizes. Here's a steep-headed parrotfish performing his daily task of scouring the rocks for algae. Imagine what would happen if his swim bladder was still evolving, or his fins and tail were only partially functional. Whilst he was either floating uncontrollably to the surface or sinking to the bottom, he would only be able to wish he was fully formed, not still evolving. Of course, some fish don't have a swim bladder, including all sharks, and these must keep moving to compensate. But swimming non-stop does not allow you to feed off the algae growing on rocks. So these kinds of fish are not grazers. Few fish are adorned with such a stunning livery akin to the feathery plumes of the lionfish. However, his attractiveness is overshadowed by his highly poisonous personality. Lionfish are related to the stone and scorpionfish and are among the most venomous animals in the ocean. A sting from a scorpionfish like this is usually fatal. Although lionfish are generally not aggressive and use their venom mostly for defense, they have been known to attack. When about to attack, the fish will raise their poisonous dorsal fins, point their head downward, and then dart forward at a fish or diver who's ventured a little too close for comfort. However, it's very unusual for lionfish to attack like this. Those feathery plumes contain thin spines connected to venom sacs, which pump poison like a hypodermic needle when touched, a very similar design to the hollow fangs and venom glands of poisonous snakes. All species in this family can inject neurotoxins, which in humans results in acute pain. This is followed by local swelling and hypothermia, that's extreme cold, and tachycardia, an increased heartbeat. After this, victims experience sweating and high fever. During the day, lionfish are mostly inactive and spend much of their time resting on the underside of rocks and corals, or gently hovering over coral formations. They will often form into groups and corral their prey of small fish into a position where escape is difficult. By collectively stretching out their fins, they form a kind of net as they approach their victims. When a small fish is within range, the lionfish darts forward at an incredible speed and sucks his victim into his large mouth. Few fish are as graceful to watch as these gently gliding beauties. Their tails sweep from side to side in an elegant display of stylish motion. But despite the beauty exhibited by these and the many varieties of coral reef fish, the endless cycle of predation serves as a sad reminder that something is wrong with our world. Some evolutionists believe that predation and crowded seas encourage some fish to haul themselves out of the water and eventually evolve into land animals. But however hazardous the seas, there simply isn't a known biological mechanism which could produce the new genetic information for all the complex features we see in landlubbers. Evolutionists claim that random mistakes in genetic information give rise to new traits. These, they say, were selected by the environmental conditions on land. Supposedly, this began the slow, gradual process of fish evolving into land animals. But anyone who has seen a fish out of water, flapping around and gasping for air, knows they don't survive very long. So, fish jumping from the sea and becoming land-based air breathers is nonsense to most thinking people. In an attempt to overcome these rather obvious evolutionary hurdles, BBC and Discovery Channel programs have suggested that the first fish that crawled out of the sea could have been a lungfish. But not being able to breathe is not the only obstacle a fish would have to overcome to survive such an evolutionary step. Water acts as a natural filter of the sun's harmful ultraviolet rays, and fish scales offer no protection from the sun's energy. And what about breeding? Fish need both males and females to reproduce. So, perhaps one of each sex crawled out of the sea, and on the same day, and, luckily, just at the point in time when plants had evolved to produce air for them to breathe. Then, amazingly, the male found the female. They bred, and their successive generations continued to evolve over millions of years. Following the evolutionary model of thinking, one must ask how these first fish would have survived whilst their food was still back in the ocean. Furthermore, how would the plants that would have been needed to produce breathable air have been pollinated, given that insects and other animals that pollinate plants had not yet evolved from fish to amphibians, reptiles, and all life on Earth as illustrated in the typical school textbook evolutionary tree? In reality, such evolutionary advances would create problems that only miracles could resolve. Sadly, despite the evidence we can all see, it is tragic what depths people will go to avoid the idea of an intelligent divine creator. To survive the demands of ocean life, a number of interrelations are needed. Like people, fish appear to change their behavior when it suits them. Groupers are mostly solitary and very territorial. Large groupers may exclusively claim an entire section of a reef as their home. Groupers can be found worldwide in a variety of sizes and colors. The larger species reach sizes of up to 9 feet and have even been known to eat sharks. These peacock and coral groupers are one of the many beautiful residents of the coral reef. They will usually inhabit anything that provides cave-like shelter. They prefer to live alone, but of course, when the time comes for them to mate, they gather together in groups. Although highly territorial and carnivorous, when needed, rather than eat them, groupers will allow small, cleaner wrasses to remove parasites and dead skin. The wrasses will even go through the mouth and out of the gills of the host fish, removing small particles of trapped food from awkward corners that could later cause infections. Cleaner wrasses signal their intentions to a potential client by performing a little dance. If the host fish needs attention, he slowly raises his head and hovers, while the wrasse provides his cleaning service. The cleaner wrasse is just beneath the mouth of this lunar-tailed grouper. The wrasse signals, but not today, thank you. How would evolutionary theory explain these interactions between so many different species? Evolutionists have invested heavily in the physical aspects of life, because everything originated from cells, they say. So from where do instinct and behavior evolve? If an intelligent designer made them, then the problem disappears. This handsome specimen is the Arabian yellowbar angelfish, and he's turning down the free dental treatment as well. Cleaner wrasses are not motivated by unconditional generosity. They get free lunch from this arrangement. Symbiotic relationships like these cannot be satisfactorily explained in evolutionary terms. New information coding and intelligence cannot be added to genes. The claim by evolutionary scientists that additional information can be added to genes is one of the biggest theory tales in the whole evolutionary fantasy. Marine biologists have long been fascinated by the relationship between the clownfish and anemones. This little clownfish is probably the bravest fish in the ocean. He will try and drive away predators of any size that try to feed off his host anemone. The tentacles of anemones have a needle-like trigger connected to stinging cells called nematocysts. When the trigger is touched, toxins are injected into the victim's skin, which has already been cut by a knife-like appendage within the stinging cells. This all happens within a fraction of a second. Anemones also secrete protective mucus, which the clownfish coats himself with. By coating himself with this mucus, the clownfish feels like one of the anemone's own tentacles, making him invisible to the anemone. Clownfish even take a tentacle of the anemone into their mouths and coat their eggs with its mucus to immunize the embryos against being stung. How this all began is difficult to say, but for these abilities to arise by some chance, random processes would be impossible. Nature is filled with these which came first scenarios. Somehow, this fish knows instinctively to coat himself in these chemicals, a case of self-preservation. But chemicals themselves cannot produce instincts or life. In another symbiotic relationship, a moray eel and a cleaner wrasse show obvious signs of intelligence and design, neither of which can evolve from chance random chemical processes. Moray eels eat fish, octopus, shrimps, crabs, and even barnacles. Although they have very poor eyesight, they have an incredible sense of smell. Effectively, they taste the water to detect their prey, using 3 specially designed olfactory organs. This is the reason for the typical gaping posture commonly seen. Reefs with these sudden drop-offs or cliff faces are home to one of the biggest coral reef fish, the humphead wrasse or Napoleon fish. This is one of the rarest fish in the oceans, where even on suitable reefs, their numbers are normally fewer than 10 individuals for every 10,000 square meters of coral reef. Wrasses are one of the largest families of fish with at least 500 varieties. Their shape, colors and size vary dramatically. He can grow to lengths exceeding 6 feet and reach a weight of up to 190 kilograms. Their color can vary from extreme blue to green, with the males being larger than the females. The beautiful Napoleon feeds mainly on mollusks, which are crushed with the molar teeth located at the back of his mouth cavity. Fish also exhibit different moods and will allow close contact one day but be more wary on another. Generally, the Napoleon is cautious, but sometimes he will allow divers a close-up experience. When a diver has constantly dived in the same location, Napoleons have become so accustomed to the diver's presence, some have even allowed hand feeding. Such behavior is very unusual amongst fish. Sadly, in parts of the Far East where he's considered a delicacy at rich Asian weddings, this graceful creature has been almost fished to extinction. He's the second most highly priced fish meat in the luxury live reef fish trade, and is one of the only protected coral reef fish to be listed by name. Male Napoleons live to around 25 years old, and females up to 32 years. They only reach sexual maturity at age 6 to 8 years, which means it can take almost 10 years to replace a lost generation. Captive breeding programs have also been unsuccessful. Their plight is an unhappy one, and without stronger conservation efforts, this beautiful fish may soon be extinct. Behavior, of course, varies between different species of fish. Fish intelligence and behavior is still under research, but some fish are clearly far more intelligent than most people previously believed. They have incredibly acute senses and can communicate amongst themselves in a variety of ways, using movement, sound, and color. Watch what happens when a foreign object is placed in the territory of these antheas, in this case a video camera. Once the diver has swum away, members of the school begin emitting small clicks. Gradually, more antheas approach to investigate the strange new object. It is as if they are telling each other, "Come and see what this is." Such curiosity is probably essential to their survival. We too have a nature to investigate and question. Where did we come from? Why are we here? And where are we going? As intelligent beings on a quest for truth, we continually search for answers to life's mysteries. Has a loving Creator put those questions in our hearts? Can the life around us provide some clues and point us in the right direction? Have you ever wondered how marine animals find their way around? Do they recognize their surroundings? Or are they directed by currents and tides or some other means? In truth, there is still much to learn. Sometimes fish are solitary, like this rather striking Red Sea bannerfish, a type of butterfly fish. On most occasions, the bannerfish swim in pairs, spending their days feeding on zooplankton, unlike most butterfly fish which feed on coral polyps. This is the wreck of the Thistlegorm, a cargo ship sunk in 1941. In this remote outpost off the coast of Egypt, a school of bannerfish have congregated. It not only provides a shelter from currents and a place to breed, but an anchor for algae and marine plants to grow. This is a black-spotted sweetlips, taking a rest within the shelter of the wreck. A shoal of barracuda congregate in the distance. Fish often gather together in shoals when they're ready to breed, but how do they know where and when to meet? Research on Pacific salmon has revealed an incredible ability to taste or smell unique trace elements in the water that ultimately lead them back to their own spawning grounds. The small amount of trace elements that fish detect in the water are literally only a few tiny parts per million. Many marine animals, like turtles, lived most of their lives alone. So, successful navigation is a matter of survival when it comes time to breed. Reptiles, including marine turtles, are cold-blooded vertebrates that breathe with lungs, are covered with thick scales or horny plates, and most lay eggs instead of giving birth to fully formed young. Amongst the 7 marine species, the most closely related are the hawksbill and green turtles. These turtles eat anything from fish and squid to sponges and crabs. The hawksbills differ from their cousin, the green turtle, by having 2 pairs of scales between their eyes instead of 1. Notice the streamlined design of the shell, which reduces drag in the water, and how her large, powerful front flippers are perfectly designed to pull her through the ocean. All turtles are now on the endangered species list. The biggest threat to their survival is the destruction of their nesting sites. These turtles will normally lay eggs every 2 to 3 years. Even though they live most of their lives alone, when it comes time to breed, amazingly turtles know where and when to find one another. And that's not all. After mating, these turtles will mysteriously travel thousands of miles to a very specific beach. But the mother-to-be does not choose a beach at random. In fact, she will only lay her eggs on the exact beach where she herself hatched from an egg many years previously. And she will find this beach for the first time, even though she has never been shown the way. Scientists believe some instinctive knowledge or animal behavior is coded into the genes, like nest building in birds, for example. So maybe this begins to explain much of the turtle's behavior. But even if sensors in the turtle's body are just responding to genetic programs, the fact that each turtle finds a specific beach location to lay her eggs is nonetheless intriguing. Incredibly, she has also timed her journey exactly so she can safely bury her eggs while the tide is out and under the protective cover of night. This has to be one of the most marvelous events in all of nature. To give them the greatest chance of survival, newly hatched turtles are already programmed, as it were, to emerge from the sand precisely at high tide, so as to conserve energy and to reduce their chances of being preyed upon whilst running for the sea. Therefore, if this unlearned information, which is vital for survival, is present in the babies as it also is with the adults, then it's evident that no turtle has ever been taught this knowledge, because it's instinctive and thus programmed by the Creator. This suggests that no turtle has ever evolved, and that the original turtle was designed complete, with all the data and functioning parts needed to survive. To travel these distances and arrive within such a small time window is an amazing feat, and the objections that could be raised against these abilities arising by processes of trial and error are simply overwhelming. Does she remember the way? Is she guided by the Earth's magnetic field, tide patterns, or phases of the moon? All these ideas have been suggested, but the truth is we still do not know for sure, and all of these theories have some flaws. However, the fact remains she knows where she's going, and she times her journey exactly. Of course, turtles cannot tell us how they do these things, but we can watch and understand some of life's great mysteries if we only study what we can actually see. When it comes to the question of origins, we humans sometimes seem to have scales on our eyes. And no matter how far-fetched the theory, unscientific or simply impossible, evolutionists will believe almost anything rather than acknowledge the overwhelming evidence for intelligent design without the random continual modifications. Like the hawksbill, it's important to have a direction in life. But for successful navigation, you must first know where you are and, if possible, how you got there. Additionally, the life around us provides signs that keep our journey on course. For example, sea fans like these grow perpendicular to the current. So, if a diver begins a dive against the current and returns with the sea fan facing him, by looking at its movement, divers can judge both the angle and direction that the water is flowing. And what about the origin and direction of our lives? How many choices are there really? So if the theory tale of evolution is the biggest hoax of modern science, as many have asserted, then it is leading us in the wrong direction. And the question everybody should be asking is, where? Amongst the 600 plus species of red sea fish are these members of the mullet family. This brightly colored species is the yellow saddle goatfish, one of the largest members of their kind. Here is a small group showing the two color phases of this species. A habit of this very brilliantly colored variety is when they're not searching for food, they rest. But these very vivid goatfish have a most remarkable feature. At first glance, they appear to have a goatee, but they are in fact barbels used for detecting food. To learn more about the incredible capabilities of the goatfish, we're going to a small group of Mediterranean islands 180 miles north of Tunisia on the North African coast. The main islands of Gozo and Malta are just 5 miles apart, separated by the uninhabited island of Comino. This is Gozo's famous Azure Window. The waters surrounding the island contain many extraordinary marine animals. This is a bearded fireworm, so named because of its irritating nettle-like sting. Shoals of soldierfish find shelter against the rocks. Eels also make use of rocks as a hiding place. Every part of the ocean provides a favorite habitat for one living thing or another. On the seabed, some truly curious creatures reside. This gurnard appears to have 6 legs, but they're actually modified parts of the front 3 rays of the pectoral fins. The remainder of her fins fan out into what looks like wings, but despite her appearance, she's not evolving into a bird or a cockroach. She's quite happy being a weird-looking fish. Sea bream are also commonly seen here swimming in small shoals. Often, bream can be observed following a cloud of sand. That's because they're following the industrious goatfish. As the goatfish stir up the sand looking for their diet of worms and benthic invertebrates, that's invertebrates that live on the bottom, the sea bream will often get a quick snack by staying close by. Obviously, the bream recognize the goatfish and know what to expect. One of the 2 commonly encountered members of the goatfish family in Mediterranean waters are these red mullet. From around 10 meters or 30 feet, you can observe these fascinating fish foraging through algae and marine plants, engrossed in their search for food. Sandy seabeds and areas covered by small stones or mud provide a perfect environment for mollusks, worms, and a variety of small invertebrates, which are the preferred diet of the goatfish. Animal whiskers differ from hair or fur because they contain sensitive nerves. The barbels on these goatfish are the super whiskers of the animal kingdom. In reality, they're a specialized taste system. Not only are they brilliantly designed for tasting their favorite food, but they can actually move them like fingers to detect small animals buried in the sand. They are so amazingly created that a 20 to 30 centimeter or 8 to 12 inch specimen like this yellow stripe variety has around 8,000 taste buds for every 1 inch of each barbel. That's around 68,000 taste buds in a fish this size. And that's not all. The tactile taste buds in the goatfish's barbels are distributed in a unique pattern, which enables them to detect how deep in the sand their prey is buried. In effect, they can almost taste as well with their barbels as we can see with our eyes, so they're not hindered by poor visibility. For divers, such conditions underwater are potentially hazardous, but these little fish can literally taste their way around. The sensitivity of these specialized barbels means they know exactly what they've touched and where it is. In a split second, the information about the type and location of their prey is transmitted to the brain and their victim is swallowed. Often, they will work as a team in side-by-side formations. Watch them as they take sand into their mouths, filter out the food, and then expel the sand out through their gill slits. If we try to explain these abilities using evolutionist theories of gradual change, there are some severe difficulties. How would they find food while their sensitive taste buds were still developing? And if they'd been able to find it, how would they know if it was the right food with only partially evolved taste buds? As a theory, anything is possible, but not in real life. Of course, these obstacles disappear if this animal has always been the same basic design as it is now. In addition to this, evolutionists can only leave us to speculate why benthic invertebrates and worms would evolve into vertebrate fish that would one day prey upon their distant, unevolved offspring. Could such developments be described as an evolutionary success story? Surely, not evolving into more complex predators would have been safer for those so-called less complex earlier life forms living in the seas. When we leave questionable theories behind and study what we can actually see, then it's obvious that a highly specialized fish that feeds on a specific type of food in a unique way must have had fully functioning equipment, beginning with the very first fish. We would be wiser to stay with what we can see and use our common sense to study the world around us. Like the goatfish, our physical brains process information which is not physical. As you are watching this program, you're sending electrical signals to your physical organ, the brain, which interprets this information of sights and sounds in wonderful and very poorly understood ways using thoughts. This is the essence of all intelligent life. Thoughts and memories, whether based on instinct or learning, actually influencing physical material bodies. The non-material and the physical working together are in evidence all around us and within us. But what message is being revealed? Instinctive intelligence endows animals with all the behaviors they need to flourish and survive. The endless cycle of predation and the instinctive intelligence that drives this is a result of what the Bible calls the curse. And in a sense, the human race, despite good intentions, moral principles, and even higher intelligence, still appears unable to escape from a pattern of destructive acts and bad behavior. So, is there a key to overcoming these trends revealed in the life around us? And if our origins are traceable to a divine creator, does he offer a hope of redemption from our inherent failings and faults? In February 1942, the HMS Maori, a British destroyer, was bombed during a German air raid. As a warship, her role was both to defend her occupants and attack her enemies. Today, she lies motionless in St. Elmo's Bay in Valletta. Her life as a warship has long ended. Once again, though, she is bustling with life. But now her life is over. New life has invaded her from the outside. All her efforts to protect herself have long ended, and her twisted frame now serves as a vessel not to accomplish her own plans, but to contain the lives of others. Shipwrecks have long served preachers as an analogy for the human condition, because it is not until we see our life as corrupted and act correctly upon this knowledge that new life from outside of ourselves can take up residence in us. When we recognize design, we instinctively understand there is a designer. This awareness is intended to prompt additional questions about our conduct in this life and our destiny. When we discover there is a creator and we read his written revelation, the Bible, then we become aware of our fallen condition, and this prepares us to accept the remedy he's provided for us. The alternative is to deny the truth and try to hide our faults. One marine animal that provides some useful analogies to our behavior in this regard is the octopus. However, finding this master of defense and camouflage is no easy task. This is a painted comber, and he doesn't like octopus. So much so, this amazing little fish will show you where an octopus is hiding by performing a little dance. A telltale arrangement of stones and discarded shells reveals the entrance to the octopus's hiding place. The dominant colors of the rocks here are a sort of red and white. And look what color the octopus is. He wasn't born red and white. He changed his color to match his surroundings. Watch what happens to his color as he moves away. He will change his skin tone to match the colors of the rocks he's touching. He does this in a split second using pigment cells called chromatophores. These coloring cells have 3 sacs filled with different pigments, which are surrounded by muscles that contract to reveal more or less of each color pigment. This has the same effect as mixing 3 colors in a computer printer. And he doesn't stop at changing his color. He can also alter his size by inflating himself to appear more threatening. What's more, he can raise small, feathery-looking protuberances on the surface of his skin, so he looks like an algae-covered rock. Additionally, he may dig himself in if he feels his back is protected. But when all defenses seem like they're failing, it's time to flee. When the octopus takes off, he makes a series of quick adjustments. First, he flattens out his body to reduce resistance with the water, whilst simultaneously smoothing out those feathery little appendages so he's perfectly streamlined. Siphons on each side of the octopus's head act like jet engines to provide a burst of speed. His next move will be to find a safe rock under which he can hide. But to cover his retreat, he shoots out a cloud of black ink. In high concentrations, this ink is toxic. So what can octopus behavior teach us about ourselves? We will go to extraordinary lengths to hide our faults, rather than face our guilt and accept responsibility for our actions. Similarly, we create great clouds to hide behind when we're confronted with our sins. Evolution provides a convenient cloud, because if we evolved from single-celled organisms to supposedly more complex life forms, then there is no creator, no divine law, and no judgment to come. The octopus has the most developed brain of all cephalopods, and like vertebrates, they have both short-term and long-term memories. They learn to resolve problems by trial and error and experience. Charles Darwin hypothesized that similarity between living things suggested that they shared a common ancestor. So, rather than accept that one designer was responsible, unlimited in his creativity, he proposed that this common ancestor relationship could only mean that new kinds of creatures had evolved over time. Darwin and all evolutionists that have followed him have had to ignore the great diversity of life that argues for intelligent design, not macroevolution. They must also overlook life's inability to pass on new information, and that only new species, not new kinds of animals, have ever been observed throughout the record of human history. And if that were not enough, not one fossil amongst millions now discovered worldwide demonstrates one kind of animal changing into another. This overwhelming evidence is understandably making many evolutionists anxious. Darwin, it has been revealed, expressed some anxiety over the Ten Commandments, God's revealed standard of right and wrong. So maybe the real issue concerns sin, not science. The Bible, on the other hand, gives an account of creation and life on earth that fits with what we can see around us, and teaches us that death, disease, and destruction entered into a world that God originally created very good. This change began with the first sin of mankind, bringing about a dramatic transformation to the original, perfectly balanced ecosystem God created. It is likely that many things about Earth's delicate balance and the behavior of the creatures that inhabit our world changed at this point. Additionally, those millions of fossilized animals and plants discovered worldwide are evidence of a catastrophic flood in the past that rapidly wiped out innumerable living things. Again, such an event, also recorded in the Bible, would explain the extinction of many species, the dramatic variations in size of animals today compared with those in the past, and the changing climatic conditions on our planet today contrasted with ancient times. As a result, there is probably a good deal about animal behavior now that differs from their original ancestors. But all that variety has arisen within the boundaries of God's original created kinds. In other words, no new genetic information was necessary, contrary to what would be needed for the theory tale of evolution to be true. So, if the Bible's account is a trustworthy record of the origins of life, does it also say anything about the destiny and purpose of all life on earth? All around us is a wonderful diversity of life. Yet within this diversity there is also great similarity. If all life on Earth is the product of one designer, this diversity and similarity is to be expected. And that animals share an amount of common features should also be no surprise, because they must share a number of similar abilities to enable them to live in the same environment. So is the typical evolutionary tree of life accurately portraying an unbroken chain that links all living things by processes of gradual change? Well, first of all, the typical evolutionary tree has some groups of animals for which even evolutionists have not been able to suggest links. That aside, let's look a little closer at the evolutionary tree of life. In school textbooks around the world, pictures representing the evolutionary tree of life depict what evolutionists believe was the gradual process of change that eventually produced all life on Earth. This began with so-called less complex life forms, which we are told evolved into fish, then amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals, and eventually man. By drawing attention to the many comparable features that animals share in common, evolutionists claim these similarities are evidence of a gradual pattern of change. So by using the same argument, would biological differences suggest we didn't evolve? Ultimately, a link between monkeys, apes, and men is needed to support this hypothesis. Like humans, these baboons have 5 digits on their hands and feet, 2 arms and legs, similar facial features, and similar internal organs. However, they also have many differences. For example, they walk on all fours, with hips and knee joints designed for tree dwelling and climbing. Unlike humans, they're covered in fur, which means they must employ a radically different cooling system to us. Humans secrete water through sweat glands to cool the surface of their skin. This would not work in fur-covered animals like the baboon. So animals have a variety of different ways to lose excess body heat. This is not a minor biological variation, as sweat glands are very complex, and given that their use in this way is unique to humans, suggests that our designer had foreknowledge about our ability to clothe ourselves and produce man-made homes where we would control our climate. Because of the obvious biological differences, Darwinists have tried desperately for many years to produce a missing link, an intermediary between apes and humans. A creature that appears to be part ape and part human. Museums of natural science around the world show models and reconstructions of ape men. School textbooks show artists' impressions of them. TV documentaries have even been walking with them. But the biggest trade secret in paleontology is that the missing link is actually, well, still missing. In 1908 through 1912, in Sussex, England, Piltdown Man was discovered. Not until over 50 years later was this find later exposed as a deliberate hoax. Tests revealed that the teeth had been filed down and skull fragments had been stained with chemicals to change their appearance. In China, Peking Man was found, or rather, several ape skulls were found, one of which was put together with another ape jawbone containing a single tooth from over 80 feet away in a different rock strata. Java Man was another contender for the missing link, except he was only the remains of one human leg bone, married together with the skull of a large ape found 45 feet away. Additionally, the fact that modern human skulls were also discovered in the same dated rock strata was conveniently kept quiet from all the reports. Lucy is another famous example. She even has her own model in the British Museum of Natural History. What the public fail to recognize is that Lucy is only an artist's impression. This is because the bones that were discovered did not form a complete skeleton. Almost no bones were discovered for the hands and feet, yet the reconstruction shows almost human-like feet on an ape-like creature. Artists' impressions are guesses, not science. It is forensically impossible to produce an accurate model of a skull from just a few bone fragments, especially when it's a unique specimen. Even with a complete skull, scientists can only guess the shape of the nose, for example, because it contains no bones. Neither does a tooth allow someone to accurately determine the cranial capacity or brain size of a creature, only to speculate. Moreover, was the claim, that her pelvic bone was distorted. This was a blatant attempt to suggest she walked habitually upright, which was never proven. Producing models and illustrations from a variety of artists' impressions has been going on for decades. Nowadays, computer-generated images adorn our TV screens, depicting everything from T-Rex to Mrs. Neanderthal. Some fossils showing the imprints of skin or fur have been discovered. On rare occasions, even with the skeleton of a specific dinosaur. But fossilized skeletons alone do not reveal an animal's color, patterning, body mass, or breeding habits as conjectured by BBC documentaries. This is science fiction, not science fact. It's obvious that behavior does not fossilize. Science is advanced by observation, not speculation. These baboons, like all apes and monkeys, have only 2 joints in the thumb, not 3 like humans, and a significantly lower level of intelligence. As a result, humans can make documentaries about them rather than the other way around. These vervet monkeys utilize a diverse number of alarm calls to warn one another of different types of predators. One type of call means leopards. Vervets respond to this call by climbing to the very ends of the branches, which cannot hold the weight of leopards. When a martial eagle appears, the vervets scurry into thick bushes or towards the trunk of the tree, where it's difficult for large birds to reach them. When the snake alarm is given, they stand on their hind legs and scan the ground. Unlike apes and monkeys, we are not born with all the knowledge needed for our survival. Uniquely, we must learn almost everything. Another special feature of human beings is the bones that form the ear. From infancy to adulthood, unlike the rest of our skeleton, the 3 bones of the human ear never grow. Our ability to hear is perfectly formed from the day we are born. Could this be a reminder that Jesus said we must have faith like a little child, and that faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the Word of God? Evolutionists have failed to produce a link between monkeys, apes, and humans, and trying to fill this gap leads us away from fellowship with our Creator. We are not just clever apes, and they are not our companions or ancestors. The very first man knew every animal that was created, and he could not find a companion amongst them. That need was fulfilled by the creation of woman. If we keep trying to build a bridge between apes, monkeys, and humans, we will never understand that there is a broken link between us and the Creator. So, with the missing link still missing, the evolutionary tree does not represent a factual foundation for the origins of all life on Earth. And in studying life on Earth, we would do well to check our information. Evolutionists are fond of suggesting that new genetic information can be added to DNA by natural processes. DNA is a chemical string which carries the instructions for manufacturing enzymes or other proteins. So what genetic information do animals actually pass on? Animals share family characteristics like color, patterning, and size, etc. But remember, their offspring are the product of both the male and the female. All offspring contain genetic information from both their father and their mother. This is a random reassortment of their grandparents' information. Parents cannot choose what information they pass on. This is a lesser-known member of the gazelle family, the white springbok. These springboks have diversified from their other gazelle relatives. This may have occurred because a small group of these springboks became separated from the parent population, and as a result, they lost information that was present in the original gene pool. These processes of reassortment or loss of genetic information are common in nature and do not contradict the idea of creation. However, evolutionists claim that such processes can give rise to completely new kinds of animals which have never been observed. The springbok diet is comprised of new grass shoots, flowers when available, and leaves. Interestingly, some antelope only feed on grass, whilst others only browse leaves from trees and bushes. And then there are the mixed feeders. In springbok herds, only the males with established territories breed. Apart from the facial stripe common to all springboks, this variety are completely white. These two common springbok males in the Kalahari test their strength one against the other. According to evolutionists, the stronger male will secure the breeding rights and therefore win the right to pass on his stronger genes to the next generation. But there's a problem with this theory. Yes, the stronger males are the ones that breed with the females, but that only means that all springbok lambs must have been parented by strong males. This creates a problem because the weaker males that grew up to be the losers in these rutting contests must also have originated from good stock. So why do they lose these fights if they're the genetic descendants of strong males? The reason is because physically stronger animals do not necessarily pass on only their stronger genetic information. And it's a good job that such information cannot be added to their genes. Imagine a planet populated by oversized, super-strength springboks. Such an imbalance would be detrimental to the delicate balance of life on Earth. Additionally, the hereditary information that does vary for superficial characteristics like color, size, and strength do not necessarily determine the success of a species. For example, in a world ravaged by disease, a stronger immune system in a physically weaker animal would provide a greater chance of survival over a weaker immune system in a physically stronger one. Moreover, what we do know is that the process of variation only ever produces limited changes and not modifications that affect the basic design of an animal or how it functions. What we can see from the study of genetics is that reshuffling of information is a common way for variations to arise in species. This reshuffling takes place at the molecular level, with complex mechanisms that appear to be designed. These changes allow creatures to adapt to their environments without needing new information. German professor Dr. Werner Gitt, an expert in information theory, said, "There is no known law of nature, no known process, and no known sequence of events which can cause information to originate by itself in matter." What nature does teach us is that physical strength does not always guarantee the survival of the fittest. In fact, amongst antelope, physical features vary with no advantage of one attribute over another. For example, springboks have lyre-shaped horns with ridges. Other antelope have straight horns like the oryx, or spiral-shaped horns like the kudu. In some antelope species like the kudu, steenbok, and impala, only the males have horns. The kudu can see through the spiral shape of its horns to the tip, enabling him to point the tip of his horns precisely. Like the kudu, we need to see through the twists of life to see the point of it all. Another interesting fact is that both the kudu and the springbok erect their fur just before they die, whereas other antelope do not. This is probably a physiological reaction. But why is it unique to just two species? Wildebeest, oryx, springbok, and blesbok will not jump over high obstacles, while impala, kudu, eland and hartebeest are fantastic jumpers. Some antelope can even swim great distances, while others are poor swimmers. Again, we might ask why evolution did not equip all antelopes with these features. Unfortunately, evolutionists are locked into a faulty ideology and have difficulty considering anything that refutes their theories. Another plains animal that is fascinating to study is the zebra, as among other things, their patterning acts as fingerprinting to identify different herd members. Southern Africa has 3 species of zebra. The most common of these is Burchell's zebra. Zebra are an invaluable member of the African ecosystem, as they're one of the few large mammals that will graze off almost any type of grass. Within herds of mixed species, each animal has its own preference of short, long, coarse or sweet grass, so zebra are normally the last to go hungry. Each species of zebra also have their own distinctive features. These Burchells have shadow stripes on their hindquarters. That's the light brown stripes between the main black ones. In addition, they have shorter, more rounded ears than mountain zebra species. Common to all zebra species, though, is a social system where they move according to rank, normally in single file with the dominant mare leading. Zebra will approach new territory very cautiously and communicate with one another using a variety of different calls. One call is to establish contact amongst herd members, whilst another warns that a predator has been sighted. Interestingly, even outside their own kind, animals sometimes work together to protect themselves. These Hartmann's mountain zebras, with their slightly longer ears, are the larger of the 2 southern African species of mountain zebra. Unlike Burchell's, they have no stripes on their bellies. When a predator is sighted, an alarm call is sounded, and the herd is alerted. In this heightened state of awareness, a potential threat is only allowed to get so close before the herd runs. Even when mixed with herds of antelopes, zebra maintain their social hierarchy. Although no 2 zebra are identical, they are still distinctly zebra, and while they will continue to show slight variations within their kind, they never transform into anything else. Through natural selection, new species of zebra have been produced, but they are still zebra and not a new kind of animal. Another species in this family is this Cape Mountain zebra, one of the rarest mammals in the world. This particular species has distinctively large stripes on their hindquarters, which stand out from their smaller body stripes. At one point, their numbers dwindled to below 100 animals. Here in the Black Mountains of the Klein Karoo, they are now protected. New species within a kind being formed through natural selection is still happening, on very rare occasions. But new kinds of animals are something natural selection has never produced, because it is biologically impossible for living things to add new information to their genes. This will be absolutely necessary to facilitate new kinds of creatures evolving. So, like the beautiful patterns on these zebra, some things really are black and white. One of the subjects most avoided by proponents of evolutionary theory is animal intelligence. Instinct and capabilities vary quite dramatically in the animal kingdom. And as any thinking scientist knows, using his own brain, intelligence and instincts cannot be explained simply by knowledge of chemicals and cells. The theory that simple chemicals could become living cells, and that those physical cells might evolve into all life on Earth, is a fantastic proposition to swallow, given the lack of scientific evidence. But living tissues evolving the capability to think through issues is even more implausible. How would material substances evolve non-physical attributes like intelligence? Even amongst the smallest creatures, there is intelligence and great diversity in design and beauty. Insects are arthropods, creatures with their skeletons on the outside of their bodies. As you would expect from what we've already seen, they work in perfect harmony with other living organisms and have features optimized to ensure their survival. The pollination of many plants, which in turn produce oxygen and food, would not be possible without an army of insects to accomplish this. And speaking of armies, these tiny insects are exactly that. Some are workers, others soldiers. Individually, they're almost powerless, but together, they're quite formidable. Insects are very industrious, and for some, even mating doesn't interfere with the daily routine. This is mating on the move. Some, despite their size in relation to their potential predators, are surprisingly capable of defending themselves. Myriapods like these giant millipedes have glands that produce hydrocyanic acid, iodine and quinine. Their acid gives off an odor like bitter almonds. They have few predators, although hedgehogs and civet cats seem to prefer millipedes as their prey. How could chemicals evolve into living organisms that in turn produce chemicals? One very rare lizard called the sun gazer eats these millipedes and somehow extracts their cyanide, which it converts into a defense mechanism within the horns of his skin. How would evolutionary theory explain a process like this? These sun gazers are one of the rarest lizards in the world, endemic to only one location in Africa. Endemic means something is only found in a certain area. Again, we must ask what determines endemic species when there are many suitable habitats worldwide. This corn cricket looks like an armor-plated alien, and if the armor fails to dissuade a predator, he can also give off a rather nasty smell. Some creatures have skills which change at different stages in their life cycle. Caterpillars go through an incredible metamorphosis from a land-based leaf muncher to a nectar-consuming winged beauty. Incredibly, the instincts needed to survive their different stages of life adjust right along with the physical transformation. Obviously, every living thing must have instincts that can be fulfilled by corresponding body parts and organs. Instincts to fly, swim, or eat leaves, etc., will be useless without the ability to do so. Evolutionary theory cannot satisfactorily explain literally millions of chicken and egg or which came first scenarios exhibited throughout the natural world. This African grasshopper wants to bury her eggs in the soil one at a time. But what use is this instinct if she cannot physically accomplish it? Fortunately, the one who created this grasshopper, with her desires, also designed the necessary body parts for her to fulfill them. Watch closely as she clears the ground and then uses a wedge-like tool called an ovipositor to make a tube-shaped hole into which she inserts an egg. Once the egg is laid, she selects another site and begins the process again. As a predator is unlikely to find all of her eggs spread over a wide area, her offspring automatically have a greater chance of survival. As mentioned earlier in the program, the need to reproduce requires a specialized collection of fully functioning body parts to fulfill the drive to breed. And sometimes finding a mate requires some unique equipment too. Elephants have a highly specialized method of communication for this. They can hear one another for distances over 3 miles using subsonic sound vibrations. If you look closely at an elephant's forehead, you may occasionally observe the skin vibrating as they generate these low-frequency sounds using their nasal passage. Even at their loudest, these sounds are still inaudible to us, since they are an octave below the range of human hearing. The ability to communicate in this way is vital to the species' existence, especially during the mating season, when a bull may have to walk several miles to pick up the vibes of a sexually receptive female. The cows are only ready to conceive for a few days every 4 or 5 years. Elephants also trumpet, which we can hear using their trunks. Evolutionists teach that the elephant's trunk evolved gradually over thousands, maybe millions of years. Unfortunately, the elephant's anatomy disagrees. Elephants have no cutting or chomping teeth with which they can bite off the vegetation they want to eat. and the design of an elephant's neck is very rigid, restricting vertical movement, so they cannot bend down to graze or bite off leaves from bushes and trees. For this reason, the trunk is designed half a meter longer than the distance between the ground and the elephant's mouth, and its length combined with its height means they can feed at a higher level than even giraffes. A trunk is an intricately designed tool, and elephants that have had this greatly specialized proboscis mutilated quickly die of starvation. Trunks are also used as snorkels, hands, hosepipes, and for defense. Again, Darwinists only focus on the similarities between elephants and other long-nosed creatures to suggest an evolutionary link, whilst ignoring the differences. Elephant calves feed on mother's milk from feeding nipples situated between the front legs of the cow. But in antelope and zebra, these teats are between the hind legs. When interpreted in light of the elephant's overall anatomy, this makes perfect sense, because it's easier for the cow to defend her calf when he's near the end with the trunk. The elephant's trunk is skillfully used in all kinds of situations. With birds, their skill is demonstrated using their beaks. When it comes to nest building, birds show an incredible amount of complex and unlearned behavior. This bee-eater excavates a hole in a mud bank, but only in a cliff facing in a particular direction. Many water birds actually construct their nests on or next to lakes and rivers. Of course, they're always clever enough not to build where there is a current strong enough to wash away the nest. Additionally, birds always build a nest big enough to contain the number of eggs they will lay, and large enough to accommodate the chicks until they're ready to fly. Is this guesswork? Could trial and error produce these abilities? The answer is obvious. They've always been able to do this. And they know when to build the nest, which in most cases is prepared before they mate. These black-shouldered kites have already begun constructing a nest made from sticks and twigs before they mated. They've selected a thorn bush for their nest, easily visible even from great distances. The kite flies in with another small branch, and if you listen carefully, you can just hear him snapping it into place. The range of materials and the designs of nests vary greatly from one species to another. In South Africa, thorn trees are a favorite choice for birds' nests. Some birds, like the sparrow weaver bird, build several. Whether this is to give his prospective mate a choice of the best one or to confuse predators is difficult to say. He constructs his nest from dry grass. This one even has a front and a back entrance. Bamboo grass has been chosen by this colorful member of the finch family. The red bishop builds his nest and then begins a little pole dance to attract a mate. Clearly, the two sexes are communicating with each other using unlearned pre-programmed data. So where does the information come from? Another master nest builder is the masked weaver bird, which can literally sew a nest together from grass. First, he selects a suitable branch. Then he creates a hoop as the main support for his design. When enough grass is woven around the branch and the hoop is in place, the foundations are then complete. Now he begins weaving a basket-shaped nest for his mate to lay her eggs. In the hot African sun, these nests are an absolute miracle of design. The insides are lined with soft grass and downy feathers, while the basket shape with its opening at the bottom provides protection from the sun and an interior where the temperature is fairly constant. The finished product is a soft, cool, comfortable nest that must make any honest observer marvel at their creative ability. Whether it's birds, elephants, or insects, the sheer magnitude of different skills and abilities should leave us in awe. Is all this diverse intelligence the result of non-thinking, chance-random processes? Or are these additional signs in our journey that point to the one who answers the ultimate questions about our own existence and purpose? In a world filled with designs, added beauty which has no functional purpose is accepted as confirmation of design. So, amongst life on Earth, how can beauty that has no function argue for evolution and not for creation? Patterning and variations in shape for certain body parts add splendor to the animal world, without offering any advantage as to how an animal survives or lives out their daily routine. If evolution had really happened, many attractive features would have been lost, because according to evolutionary thinking, you lose the parts or functions that you don't use. Of course, coloring is used in the animal kingdom for various types of signaling, like attracting a mate, for example. But there are many cases where it does not. Once again, when we look at the differences, not just the similarities, we see evidence of a designer, unlimited in ability and expression. These little penguins might not win a competition for being the most splendid of the bird family, but beauty is not just how you look. Why would the non-intelligent forces of nature pick such a striking little suit for these fellows? Is there an evolutionary advantage in having black spots on your belly instead of being just white? Or would yellow coloring above the eyes offer an evolutionary benefit over pink pigmentation? If mindless random processes only select features which offer some advantage for survival, how could evolution add beauty which often has no functional purpose? These jackass penguins, so named because they bray like a donkey, are endemic only to the southwestern coasts of Namibia and South Africa. They are Africa's only penguin and have declined in number by 90% since monitoring their numbers in 1930. Human consumption of the eggs has historically been the biggest threat. Natural predation from seals, otters, seagulls and other wildlife has also taken its toll. But nothing has had such a devastating effect as man. Oil spills alone have killed hundreds of thousands of penguins. As you can see, they're quite clumsy on land, where they come to rest and build their nests. But at sea, their true elegance is displayed. They prefer to nest in sand, under cliff ledges or bushes, and the parents will take it in turns to protect the nest, where the mother normally lays 1 or 2 eggs. The small pink patch above the eye is a sweat gland, which becomes darker the hotter the penguin becomes. Their feathers are completely waterproof, but must be molted once a year. This annual molt takes 3 weeks, during which time, without the insulation the feathers provide, the penguin cannot swim and therefore cannot eat. Instinctively, the penguin eats extra food in the period leading up to their time of fasting and molting. After gorging themselves, they can now survive on their reserves of fat while their new feathers grow. These penguins even have a specially designed gland in the head that removes the salt from the seawater, making it drinkable. The salt is crystallized and snorted out of the nostrils. The heavy bone structure of the penguin reveals he was never designed to fly. Not through the air, at least. He does his flying underwater. Each and every part is perfectly made for life in the sea. His feet are webbed, his feathers waterproof, his body insulated, and even his eyes are protected by a transparent film which moves over their eyes just as they enter the water to act like swimming goggles. On the ocean surface, on land, or under the water, they are a delight to watch, providing another beautiful creature for our enjoyment and education. Birds come in an unlimited array of colors, shapes, and sizes. A bird is a feathered vertebrate with a beak, 2 wings, and 2 feet. It's an egg layer, and most species are able to fly. Flying birds are designed with a skeleton made from hollow bones and a breathing system which effectively allows them to breathe in and out at the same time. A range of special design features are needed for birds to fly. By laying eggs instead of carrying their young, they keep their weight to a minimum. They also have one of the fastest digestive systems in the animal world, which means that they dispose of their waste quickly before gaining too much weight. Additionally, special kinds of feathers in the wings and the tail are required. Ostriches did not lose their ability to fly. They've always been flightless. Their bones, with few hollow spaces, are designed for life on the ground, and they have a respiratory system closer in design to that of mammals than flying birds. Furthermore, like the penguins, they have no flight feathers. It took intelligent humans a long time to successfully invent a flying machine. Some even died trying. Today, we too can experience a measure of aerial enjoyment. But no matter where or how we continue our journey, we are being led. We just need to open our eyes to see where.
Wanwadi ka Yesu, wanwadi cha mungima, wanwadi ka Yesu, wanwadi cha mungima, kakongodong kodi kanyo wanwadi ka Yesu, wanwadi cha mungima, kamondi odong kodi kanyo wanwadi ka Yesu, wanwadi cha mungima, ni wanwadi ka Yesu, wanwadi cha mungima, kakongodong kudikanya, wanwadi ka Yesu, wanwadi cha mungima.
Once, they were almost hunted to extinction. Today, a white rhino running with her calf is a welcome and beautiful sight. An interesting behavioral trait that helps distinguish between white and black rhinos, Africa's two species of rhinoceros, is that the white rhino calf always runs ahead of its mother, whilst the black rhino calf runs behind. The rhino is a very protective mother who looks after her calf for up to 3 years. Female rhinos are only ready to give birth for the first time at about 8 years of age. The white rhino is strictly a grazer. She has a very heavy head which is stooped forward. The lips pluck the grass and the wide mouth allows for a large intake of food. In fact, she cannot lift her head very high at all, and she will only eat longer grass if short grass is not available. Their posture and feeding habits have often resulted in them being compared to a lawnmower. Unlike cows and many antelopes, rhinos are not ruminants. That's a process where partially digested food is regurgitated and chewed again. Instead, rhinos have a system of hindgut fermentation which extracts energy from the plants they eat. As a result, they eat more per day relative to their body mass than other neighboring plains animals. In fact, rhinos spend at least half of their day feeding. Even during the night, they're actively grazing. Normally, groups of rhinos like this will consist of females and their calves. Dominant males normally socialize only when it's breeding time. They mark their territory by urinating on dung heaps or middens. These domains are aggressively defended. We can draw many useful analogies from the rhinoceros about our own behavior. Human nature, fallen and corrupted, is self-seeking. We fight for our rights and protect all that we perceive belongs to us. Yet, ironically, it is this right to direct and control our own lives that God asks us to give to Him. Despite all the human race has achieved, we're never satisfied. Our sinful nature continually struggles for more. White rhinos, the third largest living land mammal, are a beautiful addition to the natural world. Although the adults have no natural predators because of their size, they are still on the endangered species list. Their destruction has been mostly as a result of human greed. Their protection is our responsibility. More important than this is the choice we must all make for spiritual life or death. That is also our responsibility. From the very beginning, God gave man the responsibility to look after planet Earth and its inhabitants. For 3,000 kilometers along the coastline of the African subcontinent are about 25 colonies of fur seals. These are the only indigenous species of seal here, and their survival from the brink of extinction is one of conservation's modern success stories. Historically, their pups were slaughtered for their fine fur, which is too coarse in the adults to be of any commercial value. These eared seals are actually a species of sea lion, with clearly visible external ears. Another major difference between earless seals and sea lions are the hind flippers. All 14 species of eared seals have hind flippers which can be turned forward under the body to provide four-footed locomotion on land, with the body lifted off the ground. Seals cannot bend their flippers forward and, as a result, move very awkwardly on land. A noticeable feature of these mammals is that the males are much larger than the females. The females range in weight from 40 to 80 kilograms, whereas the males range from 200 to 350 kilograms. The males are typically territorial, and during the mating season they will often control a harem of up to 25 females. Additionally, males can remain submerged for about 10 minutes while the females can only stay underwater for about 7 minutes. They survive almost exclusively on fish, occasionally supplementing their diet with crustaceans, squid, and penguins. In these cold Atlantic waters, fur seals survive with a uniquely designed fur coat. Their coats are effectively arranged into 2 layers of fur. A shorter but thick layer of soft fur is kept dry by a layer of longer, coarser hair. Only the top layer gets wet, so together with the fat formation under the skin, the fur seals are perfectly insulated against the cold currents. The diversity of animal life argues over and over again for a single designer, limitless in creative ability and power. Amongst mammals, the group to which fur seals belong, there is vast variety. Some mammals, like these beautiful creatures, swim through the oceans, whilst other mammals fly or roam the earth. On land, they sleep, mate, and give birth. In the water, they hunt, swim, and play. Wherever they are, they seem content. Mysteriously, all life on Earth perfectly expresses its own life, each one distinct. But the greatest mystery of life on Earth is that of the most amazing creature of all, us. We alone were uniquely formed to contain and express not our own lives, but the life of another, the very image of the one who created us. Although the proposal of special creation is considered to be a religious idea held to by a few misguided extremists, in reality around the world there are university professors, lecturers and scientists in every scientific field who are creationists. Science deals with experiments which can be repeated, measured and observed. One-off events like theories of the Big Bang, the creation of life, or chemical evolution and single-cell to multi-celled life are not testable. They are all believed by faith. By faith, evolutionists believe once upon a time there was nothing. Then, one day, nothing exploded into everything. From this explosion of nothing were formed the stars, solar systems, and planets. On Earth, one of the planets formed from this explosion of nothing. A small speck of dust mixed with energy and water suddenly came alive, eventually evolving into all known life. The only credible alternative to the theory tale of evolution is that life produced life. And because all life on Earth exhibits design, this logically suggests a designer, unlimited in intelligence and power. The study of life on Earth reveals the truth that all life originates from a creator. This knowledge urges us to explore further the obvious questions this raises. Some form of extraterrestrial life form arriving here from another planet would also raise the same question about its origins, but with mathematically increased improbability. If the evolution theory is true, we should be able to find fossils of animals changing from one kind to another. In fact, all fossils are of fully formed and distinct animal kinds. Whilst evolutionists still maintain there are some, they even disagree amongst themselves over which of these creatures are the so-called transitional species. Evolutionists also claim that rock layers are proof that sediments were laid down over millions of years, when in fact what has been observed in the field are rock layers being deposited rapidly. If evolution is ongoing, as Darwinists assert, then as the evolutionary tree branches out, more kinds of animals would continue to appear. What we actually see is extinction, and the number of distinct life forms on Earth continues to decrease. Evolutionists continue to believe in implausible dating methods and put hope in fantastic possibilities through mutations to an ever-crumbling theory. By accepting evolutionary fables, we deny the existence of the Creator, who gave us life. To believe in evolution, one must also accept their theory that dust ultimately evolved consciousness. And yet, strangely, evolutionists consider the biblical account of God forming man from the earth and creating a living soul in him ridiculous. This soul, or consciousness, is humanity's connection with his Creator. It separates us from all life on earth by making us moral, responsible beings. But responsibility has no functional purpose unless it was entrusted. To proper thinking minds, cells to everything evolution is absurd. But coming to an understanding that all life on earth, including humans, had a designer, is not enough. The incredible array of life around us provides enough evidence for every honest person to know that God exists. But to know what He expects of us takes another step. Although the human race is all God's creation, we are not all His children. Being made in His likeness is one thing. Bearing His image is another. For that, we must be in a right relationship with Him. We instinctively know that there is right and wrong. Morality between cultures may vary. Opinions change with the times. But in the heart of every man, woman, and child is a sense of right and wrong, an echo of God's eternal laws and values found in the Bible, the only absolute revelation of truth. All people have at some point failed to live an unselfish and charitable existence by lying, stealing, and abusing others through lust and greed. It is for shortcomings like these and other sins that God holds us accountable. One thing, though, can change, and that's our life story. Our broken, fallen nature can receive new life from the One who created all life in the beginning. Our duty is to abandon our selfish ways through repentance and ask God to live His perfect life through us daily. As Jesus the Creator said, "Unless a man is born again, he cannot see the kingdom of heaven." To find Him is to find life and have it eternally. This is the reason for the journey, that we might know Him and the power of His resurrection.
Hey Yahweh, kumama. Hey Yahweh, kumama. Hey Yahweh, kumama. Hey Yahweh, kumama.
Batuna kangai, wapinza mbela yongo. Asala kilola, asali mukili. Molimo na zambe, katia motema nanga. Atatoliowe, Yesu Masia. Yopona kingai, utabo mwana nangai. Kinoleloyo, nakomi moyemi kumama lelo.
Hey Yahweh, kumama. Hey Yahweh, hey Yahweh kumama. Hey Yahweh, hey Yahweh kumama. Hey Yahweh, hey Yahweh kumama.
Nzambe bolingo tonetolio kumama. Elikiananga Nzambe makasi kumama. Opesinga ipema pona yembela yo kumama. Zuwa lokumu, zuwa nonkembo, okumama Yahweh.
Yahweh, hey Yahweh kumama. Hey Yahweh, hey Yahweh, hey Yahweh
Okumama Yahweh.
Hey Yahweh, hey Yahweh kumama. Hey Yahweh, hey Yahweh kumama.
Moto mayele azali bankisi alongili wate Yesu elonga. Moto mayele azali fize alongisi date Yesu elonga kumama lelo.
Hey Yahweh, hey Yahweh kumama. 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 Yahweh kumama. Yahweh kumama.
Elika yabanda
Yahweh kumama.
Kasina biso
Yahweh kumama.
Topelelio
Yahweh kumama.
Bayokolo sambo
Yahweh kumama.
Yabana na